Hello and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Jacob Finley, founder and CEO of Fullbay, and I'm here with Chris O'Brien. Hey, Chris.
Good afternoon, Jacob.
And we are excited to be here sharing a webinar with you guys. And today we're talking about the diesel technician shortage. Real quick introduction. I mentioned about me, but Chris O'Brien is our COO. And has been on many of our webinars. We want to introduce our special guest. Tim Spurlock is the CEO of American Diesel Training Centers, and Tim's in the studio with us today. Welcome, Tim.
Hey guys, thanks for having me and good afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you. Looking forward to this discussion.
Absolutely.
Just jumping in right here, if you guys could, picture a world with no technicians. Picture a world where that job posting that you have out there is never going to get answered because there's no more to be had. You know, the text that you currently have, that's all you got to work with. What would that be like? And it seems like more and more the reality is that's kind of what's shaping up. Isn't that right, Tim?
Yes. I mean, I could picture kind of a dystopian type world, right? But I mean, it could be a situation where, these days, I think it's 1 in 18 people are employed in the transportation business, right? So everything could be from ice cream not showing up on ice cream shelves to your kid's birthday present not showing up via a delivery truck. I mean, things these days everything is so logistics, right? It's all about logistics. It's all about time. It's all about service. And the one thing that I think, consistently gets missed is that somebody has to repair these vehicles or even prevent issues from needing repaired to keep them on the road.
So the whole scenario that people talk about how, we're just a couple days from empty grocery shelves if trucking stops. Those who maintain and repair the trucks, if they go away, the trucks go away.
Yeah, that's correct.
In a way, it's a national security issue.
It could be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that right now. I don't know that I would be quite that. It's
not
that
time
dire.
To call it the National Guard yet.
Yeah, the National Guard can stay put for now. But this is a problem that it didn't just surface yesterday, right?
Yeah.
It didn't just surface 5 years ago. It didn't just surface 10 years ago. It's a problem that's just been gradually building, and we're literally at this point now at the tipping point. Is where we are.
Yeah, I'd also say that the first thing we'll see slip is the safety, right? So as soon as the diesel check shortage, there's nobody to repair or do the inspections. You start skimming on certain repairs, and next thing you know, there's a wheel falling off on the freeway. And earlier we reported on that and the impact of that.
That's exactly right, and it's a huge problem. In fact, I heard a story right along those lines last week about a company who they just don't have technicians, and one of the first things to go is trucks being sent out on the road when they shouldn't be being sent out on the road.
Absolutely. Preventative maintenance program, that's your staple, and you got to have techs to do that. And if you can't keep the roads safe, we've got a more epidemic issue
That's
out
right.
there.
That's right. And we'll get into this more. I know you guys will, but I mean, preventative maintenance it's the easiest, right? I mean, it's one of the easiest things to do. And that's really one of the things that we'll talk a lot about and how we can address that.
Great point.
So I want to ask our attendees here a polling question. How long does it usually take you to find and hire a technician for your shop? I'm going to launch this poll. And is it less than a week, 1 to 4 weeks, 1 to 2 months, or over 2 months? And we'll just allow these responses to come in here for a minute. And lots of job postings out there. We'll talk about that in a minute. How in the world do you find technicians? All right. Well, on this poll, it looks like the majority of them are saying over 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a surprise. I mean, I think if you look at just general, and again, we're in a 3+% unemployment economy, but even if you look at just general across every industry, SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Managers, the average job opening everywhere is about 45 days, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's significantly, and our numbers show that significantly worse in this business.
Okay. So why is it? We live in a free market society. Supply and demand is at work. There's a technician shortage, so the supply is short of technicians. Why is that? And maybe you can give us more insight into that, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this problem didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be solved overnight. But I think that the primary piece that we've identified at American Diesel Training Centers is that the true barrier to people coming into this business is not level of training. It's not what school they went or did not go to. It's the fact that people these days in today's society and economy, they don't have 2 years to go to a traditional community college or the type of money that a sort of typical technical college costs. So the issues are it's more about, you know, retirees are retiring in record numbers. Companies are growing and posting positions in record numbers, but the real issue, it's not a training issue, it's a supply issue, right?
Yeah, people view the industry as, we always say, unsexy.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
so that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Not as many young people are wanting to go into it.
You know, it is, and it's really interesting. And I actually, I saw a campaign on social media a couple days ago, and I won't, a very well-known national person, and the campaign is basically make work sexy again, right? And I think that's that has some to do with it. But what we found is that we actually embrace the grit of it, right? We embrace the fact that, you know, this is it's a grinded out kind of tough job. And if you don't have that, maybe it's not the right line of work for you. And we found that really resonates with people. We find it's less about the sexiness of the job. It really boils down to two things: a solid wage and career potential and opportunity. That's really what we've identified are the main key points.
So let's talk about the openings. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I actually think diesel repair is much more sexier than light automotive.
Yeah.
Unless you're in high performance industry, you know, you're building SEMA show cars. The last thing you want to do is go grind out for $15 an hour working on Honda Accords somewhere and try to get certifications or hopefully work at a dealership. You want to get into the heavy repair business right away.
Chris, I totally agree, I'm you know, diverting a little bit. We had a phenomenal gal who came out of our program, and she posted a few pictures of herself on Facebook, and they literally reminded me of the Rosie the Riveter World War II style pictures, right? And to me, that's what resonates with people, right? It's the toughness picture, right? It's not, you know, it's not the sexy, glamorous job, but people still today are motivated by the toughness, right? And the work and the pride of work that goes into this
It's
stuff.
real. You're
real.
actually making
Yeah.
a difference,
Yeah.
making these machines work and so forth.
Yeah.
So I've got the slide up here showing the 18-month history of posted job openings, and maybe we can talk about this. So it's showing January 2018 versus January 2020. Let's talk about that, Tim. So there's even more postings today than there was 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, where do you want to start? I mean, I've watched this for about the last 4 years, and actually, even if you look at the last 12 months, you know, in the United States in terms of job opening postings on the largest job board, which is Indeed.com, which we believe is probably the best barometer. Last January 2019, there were close to it was about 12,000 job openings. Literally a year later, there were just under 20,000 job openings in one calendar year, right? So the interesting thing about this slide is that I think I probably sent these slides to you guys maybe a week ago. Within a week, that 18,600 has grown to 19,500. I literally just checked it before we came on the air, right? So the scary thing is that this is not even adjusted for, this doesn't take into account, we're not even at, typically companies will not hire as much in January because the weather's bad, all that kind of stuff. So when we hit June, July, August, I think the numbers will be more, even more scary than they are now.
You know, one of the things too is with the job openings, you see a lot of companies coming back to the U.S. and I think that I think there was recently a quote. There was 20,000 businesses that now are no longer overseas coming back to the U.S. So as we continue to invest in the economy and strengthen the economy, we'll continue to see jobs more scarce. But it's almost a good problem to have in some ways, right? It's a scary problem that we need to invest in technicians and diesel technicians, but it's also great that we're actually rebuilding the country and we're starting to create new jobs. And so I think that that's also rewarding with this problem.
Yeah,
Absolutely, for sure.
So new techs versus demand. How about this one?
Yeah, to me, this is the crux to the problem, right? So if you look at U.S. Department of Labor, if you look at white papers that have been written by some of the largest leasing companies in the United States, I mean, right now, today, and our research shows the same thing. And even we think that Indeed is about a third of what the real number is in terms of techs needed. So 19,000 times 3 is about 60,000. Today, we think the real number in the United States is about 60,000. That's exactly what the U.S. Department of Labor says. Yeah.
And what you hear often with shops is their number one problem is not that they can't find enough work. They just can't find enough technicians.
That's
like
it.
The work is out there.
Yeah, and that's it. And I mean, if you look at the number of, there's about 8,000 people retiring out of the business a year, and there's about 6,000 what I would consider to be new entrants coming into the profession, and that would be people who have completed a post-secondary program, a typical technical education program. So again, it's a supply and demand thing. Just do the math. Need 60,000, 6,000 coming in. So there's a lot of work to do. And the good news, and I know we'll get to it, is the good news is that what we found in our experience at American Diesel is there's no shortage of people willing to come into the profession. But remember the two barriers, and I'm gonna hit this a lot: time and cost.
Time and cost.
Time and cost.
So right now, the demand versus new entrants, it's 11%.
Yeah.
The new entrants represent 11% of the actual demand that's out there.
Yep.
All right, we're going to launch another quick polling question. So what do you think is the median hourly rate for diesel techs? Because obviously, basic economics, when supply goes up, prices go down, on the supply and demand curve. When supply goes down, prices go up. Like the price you have to pay technicians goes up because there's a shorter supply. So just launching this this polling question here. What do you guys say is the median hourly rate for diesel techs? And while this is running, Chris, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I noticed that depending on where you are in the U.S., there could be, some of you might say, well, this is too high. 17 is too high. I pay 15. Or it just depends on where you are in the U.S. But generally speaking, 17 is probably about the lowest that we see, especially in depressed markets. To keep good talent, you're going to pay that even to have somebody do preventative maintenance, oil changes, basic inspections.
Yeah.
If you're certified and you're doing federal inspections that are legit, or CVIPs in Canada, you're paying much more than that when you start to get a federally certified person that is doing some more, putting their name on that inspection for that truck to drive down the road.
Okay, so what we're seeing is about 63% are saying 2276, another 30% 2775. So almost all are saying those higher numbers, majority right in the middle. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, we see, and I think one of the interesting things is we do have a sort of a national footprint. So we see what companies around the United States are doing, and we know that there are large companies out there. This is just amazing, right? Because we're, the world that I came up in, you would get lucky to get a 3% raise a year. I mean, there's some companies that are adjusting tech salaries 4 times per year up, right? We just actually had a class in Kansas City graduate, and several of those folks with no experience received offers making between $23 and $24 an hour. That's almost $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. Yeah.
So speaking of salary, we've got it depends on what part of the country you're in. I mean, there's parts of the country where $22 an hour is untenable. Like you just can't find it. Are you guys seeing a similar uptick in the hourly rate that the shops are charging to their customers to make up for the fact that they're having to raise the salary?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of these things that you have to do, right? I mean, so if your employee costs, your labor costs go up, you have to charge a little bit more. So for sure. And we see the regional stuff too. I mean, it's probably in line with what most industries see based on where they're located in the country.
Yeah. I used to set up a lot of, just dating over the last 3 or 4 years, setting up various shops. You used to see, 85, low 90s. We're starting to see a consistent 100, 105, 110, 115. And then if you get into Canada, you're always up and you're well over the 6-figure mark.
Yeah.
And then it depends on your specialty, but it's definitely moving up. What's amazing is when I see heavy repair and look at the complexity, and then you go to the Honda dealership and they're all over 100 and then some. The Chevy dealership. So we're just barely catching up with that automotive market is what I see, and it's a fair exchange.
Yeah, we've written a lot about that, and about how in many ways your labor rate determines your customer base. And given the fact that there's more work out there typically than a shop has capacity to do, sometimes shops feel bad charging a higher labor rate, or they feel like they need to compete in some way by lowering it. But what we've seen is the higher the rate, the better quality of customers you're bringing in. So if you are able to be picky, that's real. And this is, I mean, the costs have to come from somewhere. Like, you don't have to be the martyr and eat the increased compensation that you have to pay technicians in this market. Don't feel guilty about raising your labor rates. And what we've seen is there's actually a lot of positive benefits to doing it. Depends on the market, but overall.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. And I mean, we work with shops that have sometimes a 2 to 3 week wait time to get repairs done. So if I'm running a business and I take my truck into a shop, I don't know that I'm not going to nickel and dime and really worry about what that rate is. I just want my truck fixed, right? So I mean, I know that there's a ceiling, right? But I don't know that cost shopping is, needs to be as pervasive as maybe it is.
Right. In the commercial repair space, it's not about money, it's about time.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Time is the number one.
We've identified that too. It's all, again, time,
get the truck back on the road, making money for the customer.
Time and money. That's everything.
Definitely. That's the industry, just being in supply chain, it is all about time and uptime. If you we would have $40,000 load of groceries to deliver in town. If the reefer stopped working or the truck was broke down, you've got customers compromised, and now you've got groceries compromised, frozen goods, refrigerated. There was a point where it almost didn't matter how much you spent on the preventative side, because it paid 2x, 3x every single time. One truck down, you could pay for your maintenance for a month, depending on what was wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things about this business is I do think that there are some opportunities for companies to become way more efficient in terms of really measuring that ROI, right? Yeah. In all aspects of their business, there's a huge opportunity there to make some difference.
Yeah, for sure. So we got a polling question here. What type of education did you receive to become a diesel tech? Now, option D is I'm not a technician, but was it you learned back home on the farm, you went to a formal diesel or automotive school, or you learned on the job? I'm going to launch this poll and see what we got here.
I actually can't wait to see these results.
Tim, how did you learn to be a diesel technician?
I'm D. I learned nothing. Right. I asked my business partner Chris Ellis for what I need to do.
Yeah.
I learned the market though by working with automotive and truck schools for over a decade.
Yeah.
When we were kids, my father was a RV mechanic, so he did a RV mechanic work, and we thought it was just fun to tap the bearings on the palm of your hand to load them with grease. So he would do wheel seals or axle seals and stuff, and we would tap the bearings. We'd be like, "Can we do that?" And we'd like lob all this grease on and just sit there and tap them. That was late 70s, early 80s, and we just loved it.
Yeah. And I think that's another one of the challenges is there just aren't the backyard mechanics that there used to be. And that's really hard to quantify, but I think in general we see that a lot.
So it looks like on the actual results, about 20. So those of you who are technicians, about 20% did learn back home on the farm. The majority learned on the job though, and about 40% actually went to a formal school.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What schools are out there available to train technicians? So if we only have 11% of demand being met with new entrants into the market, this must be a hot industry, right? There must be a ton of schools offering diesel education.
Yeah, this is kind of what drives me crazy is that there are diesel programs out there right now that are essentially empty. At really solid programs. And again, it's not as much the footprint, it's the bodies in the classes, right? So I think that one of the things that we're just super passionate about is, and we're huge supporters of education, of public education, of private education. And if we had a mission statement at American Diesel, it's to bring more talent into the industry. I was talking to a VP of a regional truck dealership in Ohio, and of HR, and she was telling me that 5 years ago they could go to the local community college and maybe they'd have 15 or 20 technicians in a class. Today there are 3 to 4 technicians in the class, and the problem is that many of these programs now are facing cuts are being cut because they just don't have the students to support it. I'll tell you one story. I spoke to an automotive instructor, I won't mention the school, at a very large community college school system in Chicago, Illinois, and he said my school actually looked at adding a diesel program, and they decided not to because they didn't think the market demand was there for it. I'm thinking there are hundreds of jobs posted, hundreds on Indeed, meaning there's thousands available. So again, the issue, companies would line up a mile long to hire these folks. It's getting the folks into the programs that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 190 diesel schools in the U.S., 20 students per year.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are about 190 diesel programs in the United States. And yeah, in my experience, an average size, probably above average size, is 20 students. The real challenge with with diesel programs too is many students, they came out of high school and they probably didn't like being in school, right? So being asked to sit for 2 years is probably a non-starter for many of them. The second issue is that many students will just take electrical and then they're out. They go out and work in the workforce because again, they're like, well, why would I finish this program if I can go be hired by a company immediately versus having to spend 2 years in this program and time and cost and all that.
Yeah.
So the one that blows me away, and get this, guys, the entire state of Michigan, there's one diesel program in the state of Michigan, and it's really meant for kind of a 4-year management degree. There's not one hands-on diesel technician in Motor City, USA. Yeah, it's a
crazy.
problem. Yeah, it's
all of Michigan.
All of Michigan. Yep.
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing about that is that I think the challenge is that we talk about this is when schools look at adding programs, or when they look at marketing and recruiting for programs, even when they talk skills or skilled labor, it's the sexy stuff. It's robotics. It's advanced manufacturing. It's CNC, right? It's not truck. It's not car, or it's healthcare, or it's first responders. That's what they all, because again, there's a financial return for that. You can pack 30 or 40 healthcare students in a classroom. You don't need 10,000 square feet and $100,000 in tools and trucks to work on.
Yeah.
Right? So
So there's more NFL teams in Michigan than diesel repair schools.
That is correct. That is correct. We loosely defined NFL teams. Sorry to my Michigan fans out there.
Loosely defined. Love it.
All right, so we have the slide, Minnesota Community College. So it's the cost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you sit for 2 years, but then you got to pay for it.
Yeah, you sit for 2 years, and then you have to pay close to $20,000. Yeah, I mean, and it's a real problem. And again, you could take electrical, and many shops will hire you just based on your electrical experience. But yeah, the problem starts at the beginning, right? So if you're looking at recruiting, that farm kid to come to the program, and you say, okay, it's going to take you 2 years and cost you $20,000. That's a really hard sell. And I think another challenge is that the community college system, they may have 1 or 2 marketing recruiting types, so they have to recruit across the entire portfolio of programs that they offer, not just one specific program.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then so that's community college, publicly funded, for-profit colleges.
Yeah.
Right. That's another route.
Yeah, and there's really what I would say, sort of 2 types of schools, right? There's your public community college, and then there's your sort of typical technical colleges. They're both fine programs, right? The programs are outstanding. It's really the mechanics behind the programs. And so your typical, what we would call kind of a for-profit, some are publicly traded program, they're very intensive. They're 12 to 13 month programs, and they're full time. So many, you don't really even have the opportunity to work a part-time job because you're going to school full time for these programs. So you're paying, and many of these programs, what we found is most of students, they fund these programs via Title IV funding, which is student loans. So they'll come out of the programs. Now we talked about the starting salary, right? So they come out of the programs between $20,000 and $40,000 in student loan debt. So just do the math. If you have a $500 or $600 a month student loan payment, and you're making that at $22, $23 an hour. On the surface, that sounds like pretty good money, but when you're trying to pay rent, support a family, pay for your student loan, it's just a mathematical equation. I mean, as a finance accounting guy, it just doesn't work, right? The numbers just
you
don't
almost
add up.
don't want to encourage people to do that.
It de-incentivizes. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I'm kind of a simple guy. If I can come off the farm and make the $22 an hour and not go to school and just do on-the-job training, I won't take the debt. And because if someone can prove to me that I'm going to get $40 an hour to go pay $32,000 for schooling, well, then maybe we have an equation. But it's not there. Is that what we're kind of seeing? Is that I go spend this money, but there's no wage to back it up that gives me more money because I still don't know what I'm doing. I know theory, or I have limited hands-on experience.
That's a great point. And there's a couple of things that I'll say is that what I tell people. I did an interview one time, and the person asked me, she said, what advice would you give a high school student who is really interested in going into this field? I'd say walk right down to the local shop and say that you'll either work for free or you would just like to work as long as they agree to teach you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they'll give you that on-the-job training. So I think that's really that's one of the things that's kind of missed is in many cases schools are actually overtraining, right? And I think we'll get to this, but you go to that typical technical school and they literally train you on stuff that you will never touch for several years, until several years into the profession.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got the community college option, getting trained down on the farm, or for-profit college. I think we have the slide here. I mean, there's got to be another way without sending people into a bunch of debt, so on and so forth. And obviously that's why we brought you on, because we really like what you guys are working on. So talk about the overtraining thing.
Yeah, and thank you. That's really nice. I mean, and I think that if you could say there's one reason why we founded American Diesel, I just couldn't take kids coming out of post-secondary programs mired deeply in student loan debt. And then on the other side, we talked to a lot of companies, and companies would say, we don't need our new employees or our new techs to be trained this much in depth. And so we're thinking there's a real opportunity to solve a problem here, because a lot of companies would say, we're hiring people off the streets. We just need something. So I remember it literally started, and a great guy, and he recently passed away. But he owned a trucking company outside of Columbus, Ohio, and his name was Jerry Alcott. And we were meeting with Jerry, and Jerry was talking about a kid who walked in. He had a toolbox, just a very low end toolbox, and he had virtually no training, but he'd gone to vocational program. And Jerry said, "Will you show up on time every day, and will you learn on the job?" And the kid said yes, and he hired him, right? And it was a complete success. And so we thought, wait a minute, this whole thing's kind of backwards, right? What if we created a program that brought people into the business who wanted to be in the business and gave them just very basic, proficient, light mechanical, hands-on training? Would that solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
And we limited their out-of-pocket costs so that they didn't have to go deeply into student loan debt, right?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's a group out of Minnesota. We were talking. They had 3 in-frames going on. So it's for those of you, everybody on this webinar, most of them know that's tearing down the engine or the top portion of the engine. So right. So they've got 3 in-frames in the shop. We were talking about the technical requirements, like the person trained, the master mechanic that's going to do all of that work, because they were doing it in-house. They were subbing out some machine work. And they're like, no, we don't actually do it that way. There's not a master mechanic, 3 of them working on this. There's a cheap labor teardown guy who's learning. There's the master mechanic who's going to assemble it. And once it's assembled, we have this great guy that does tune-ups. We've got to make sure this thing runs, and that's a specialty. So they kind of broke it down, and they were specialized to where, like, the school might have taught one person how to do the whole thing, but they needed this thing to happen and happen quickly. And there were specialists there were guys that were really good at certain components, and not having the master mechanic just doing general labor tearing down an engine.
Right. And you see less, and you guys know this. I mean, you see less and less of that every day. And,
Yes.
and what I think one of the challenges is you find someone who's invested that time and that money in traditional education, and they come out and they tell the person they're interviewing with, I want to make $30 an hour and I want to rebuild engines. And that's just almost a non-starter out of the gate, because Cummins, you're not going to put a 20-year-old kid or a 40-year-old person who has very limited training working on a Cummins engine, right? No matter how much, they got to be factory certified,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
In the shop I worked in, we had an apprenticeship program with that aim, bring somebody in. And what we'd also do is before the apprenticeship program, we would hire assistants. So for the really good technicians that were really efficient, we'd give them an assistant, pay him, whatever the wage was at the time, $8 an hour, $10 an hour. And they would be, getting the tools and learning light mechanical, some PM stuff. And then, the good ones, the idea was to get them into the apprenticeship program, so
Yep.
on and so forth. And all the while trying to run a shop. So kind of trying to run an educational program inside
Yeah.
the shop and run the shop at the same time. But, out of like sheer, not desperation, but sheer like trying to make something work. You kind of have to do that, and it worked pretty well. I think it could be a good pipeline, but it's one more thing to have to worry about. In terms of what's going on in the shop, there's so much going on.
And you're exactly right. I mean, that's one of the challenges, right? It's like, as a shop owner, your core competency is fixing stuff. It's not running an apprenticeship program,
school.
right? It's not running a school,
Right.
right? But I mean, what we always say is, I'm being a little dramatic about this, but like, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I think all options today need to be on the table for shop owners who are looking at, how in the world do I fix this technician shortage problem?
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So what are the skill levels needed in techs? You mentioned that a little bit earlier, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, so
is it an in-frame?
Yeah,
you got
I'll
to get people off the street and have them doing in-frames.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit more detail. But so, as you guys know, the answer is no, right? And if you look at your all we did was, when we founded American Diesel, is we just followed what the market wants, right? I mean, and we've kind of talked a little bit about it, but you just look at your most common repair issues, right? And guess what? They're not rebuilding engines. They're wheels, their tires, their rear seals, their preventative maintenance, their brakes. Like, if you can't do brakes, you probably can't be in this business. And that's really what we focused on. So we built it's a 300-hour hands-on program, mostly hands-on. And we were able to do it so that we have built two company-owned facilities, but then we just figured out how to disaggregate our program out of the company-owned facilities, so we can kind of set it up anywhere, right? So it's really sort of a pop and drop, or we can set up longer term. But that's really the key. The real key is it's finding the people, giving them a short but intensive, proficient, amount of training that allows them to enter that shop day one ready. And again, we're huge on attitude. Do you want to be there? If you don't, you're probably not right. Aptitude.
Do you guys help find the people? Because that's part of the equation.
That's
right?
what we do. That's what we're really good at.
Because if I'm a shop on Indeed, I mean, I'm going to be one of those 19, 20,000 listings. And that's yet another core competency that suddenly I have to get really good at to keep my shop alive.
Yeah,
the
best thing that we ever did was we hired, I'm dating myself a little bit because I remember when he was born, he's now 22-year-old kind of social media expert, right, who really knows how to find that demographic. But there are, and we guarantee this, there are millions of people out there in this country today, they're working in what we call high effort, low skill, low wage jobs. And they can easily they have that desire. Like, we don't believe that stuff. Millennials don't want to work. That's like, you hear all that stuff in the media way too much, right? People want to work. There's an unquantifiable appreciation that people have in working. We don't think that's gone
millennials
away.
are still human.
They are.
There's a human desire to want to work.
They want to work. But the problem is, many of these people, and I won't name the name of the company, but everybody in here uses it. It sounded really cool to work in a warehouse, to work for this company, until you realized that you had to run 10 miles a day and you had to bring your track shoes to work, right? And oddly enough, this company actually pays you to get training to leave the company to go get another job, right? So there's millions of people out there in what we call, again, low skill, high effort, low wage jobs. But they're the same people. They don't have the time or money to go to traditional education, but they just need a little bit of that basic hands-on training and really an opportunity in this great business. And many times it starts out on the floor. Many times I talk to CEOs almost every day who started out as technicians on the shop floor. There's not a better place to learn this business than the shop floor.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I painted tires. Believe it or not, I painted tires
still do
with
that.
gasoline and paint.
You're really dating yourself now. Yeah.
My hands are paying for it to this day.
So Tim, let's get to it. Let's talk about what you guys are proposing for the solution. You talked a little bit about it. So recruiting, you guys are helping with recruiting, obviously, and that's nice. But what else?
Yeah, and I know we talked a little bit about this before we went on air, but for those who are listening who own an independent shop and you're shaking your head and like, oh, this is great. This guy's, he's just talking to the big fleets and the big dealer groups. That's really, I honestly believe that this constituency, the problem is most solvable because you're not trying to, there's some companies out there that have 1,000 openings across the United States. And many of your listeners on this webcast may have 2 or 3 openings, right? Mm-hmm. So what we do is we find those people. We decide where we're going to put a program, and many times a program can host that in their shop. We'll host it in our shop. We'll figure that out later. But all you need is the desire to host a program. You need a building. You need a dedicated truck to work on. You need tools, air, and power. We pretty much do the rest, right? Yeah. So we find those people who want to come into the business. We vet them via recruiting. And we bring the right people into the program, right? And after that, we put them through, sometimes it's a full-time 6-week program, 8 hours a day. Sometimes it's a part-time 10-week program. Again, we can tweak this thing to really what the needs of companies are. Sometimes one company will do it on their own. Other times, sort of friendly competitors will kind of form like a little consortium, and maybe one class, Chris, you would have it in your shop. The second class, Jacob, you would have it in your shop. We either source the instructor or we do a train the trainer for one of your instructors.
So you guys have a couple of facilities, but you're covering a good portion of the country, not through those facilities, but correct, going like on site at shops, at host shops.
Yep. And we can do all the above. Some shops, they send their people. We'll do an in-residence program at our shops. But yeah, the most important question that we got when we first started the business, and it really made us think, was from a company that said, this is great, we love this idea, but what are you going to do for me outside of Columbus, Ohio? So I thought, oh, wow, okay, I guess this thing just got really bigger than we thought it was going to. So, again, we listened to the markets. We said, we've got to figure, and we're like, wait a minute, there's thousands of shops and bays across the United States that they're not doing anything in the evening, right? And they have some space. So
yeah, we used to turn a bay into a classroom every week
there
in
you
our toolbox meeting.
See, you were doing it, right?
Yeah.
You were doing it. The key is that we figured out how to bring in that right, talent pool into somebody who really wants to be trained to be in this business. But
Love it.
You were doing it. Yeah.
Love it.
Many of your listeners are probably doing it in some form or fashion right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys do this. You're looking for host companies, host shops, essentially, to host
Correct.
the training.
Yep.
It's a kind of like a symbiotic relationship, but that's not required. It's not. So if I want to have some technicians trained, I don't have to host it necessarily, but I could.
You could, yeah.
How does that work?
So, if you're in one of our cities.
And we'll link to your website,
Yeah.
obviously.
And there's
all
that stuff,
right.
landing page. But
Right.
so if you happen to be in one of our cities that we're in, just come hire people, right? No strings attached, just come hire them. So, and you can see, but I'll rattle off a few, but Columbus, Cincinnati, Charleston, South Carolina, Pompano Beach, Florida, Kansas City, San Antonio. So there's, we've got a pretty decent footprint.
So you're saying shops in those cities and others where you have a footprint, they could contact you right now. You have technicians that they can hire.
Yep. Just come hire, right?
Yeah.
No strings attached. Piece of cake, right? And the second piece is, again, you can host a program at your shop. We've even done implementations where we've literally just rented space from a shop and we've put the program in that shop. So, again, it's kind of like necessity is the mother of all inventions. So we kind of love nothing more than solving problems. So bring the problem to us and let us see if we can figure out a solution. The one thing that I want to get to, though, is, and we feel really strongly of this, and I don't even know if we have it on the slides, but we just really believe that companies need to be involved to contribute to the cost of that education to that particular student. So if somebody just walks off the street and wants to come to an American Diesel Training Center and just pay cash, it's $8,000, right? So,
Okay. That's for the 60-hour. I'm sorry,
for the 300-hour program,
course.
right? So
300-hour program.
they'll leave. We don't do title for funding. We don't do student loans. We probably don't have enough time on this show to get into the way that we finance it. But they're going to leave with a roughly about a $300 a month payment, right?
Okay.
And what our numbers show is that companies who assist students in making those payments are more than 2 times likely to retain that employee for a period of time of greater than a year, sometimes even 2 years, right? So
Yeah.
again, bigger conversation, maybe a separate webinar, is how companies can get involved in helping with that.
Well, let's talk about it. We have some time to really
Okay.
go deep on this. So we showed the slide with the skill set that the market is demanding. So they're not the demand isn't necessarily in frames. It's the ability to do PMs, wheel
Yep.
seals, tires, light work, maintenance,
Yep.
and so forth. You're training to that, correct?
We're training exactly to
So
that.
for the 8,000, you come out of the program with the skill set that was on that list.
Yes. So brakes, wheels and tires, preventative maintenance, electrical. We do after treatment. We do
Okay.
HVAC. I mean, it's a comprehensive training. We focus on some aspects deeper, like electrical and like brakes and the preventative maintenance stuff. Other pieces we don't go as in depth, like after treatment or maybe HVAC. But yeah, I mean, we focus on the stuff that keeps the vehicle on the road. I think the interesting thing is that after a 300-hour program, graduates of American Diesel work for well over 100 different companies.
How do shops usually handle it? Say they have somebody they found and they want to put them through. I mean, how do shops typically approach this, like in terms of helping pay for it? Because one of the things that we did in our apprenticeship program is we made them sign a non-compete, and there's a monetary value there, so on and so forth. How does that usually get handled by the shops with this training? Because the last thing you want to do is train somebody and then they go across the street, right?
Absolutely. And we completely believe in that. And I'm amazed because I used to ask people like, why don't you have a non-compete for your technicians? I mean, you're investing a ton in, and I don't know if it's just an industry thing that a lot of people don't do it, but really what we feel very strongly that works the absolute best, because it allows us to recruit the best talent out there, is that the employer essentially hires that individual on day one and says, okay, Jacob, I'm going to interview you. I really like you. You don't have a ton of experience. Maybe you did grow up on the farm or you tinkered around with cars. I'm going to send you to American Diesel. And I'm going to handle that financial arrangement with American Diesel myself, right?
So
Now,
you guys have a way to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Ways to do that. And again, probably too deep to get into.
And you
on
probably
this.
get a break for hosting training.
There's all
or
kinds of
something.
that. Yeah.
All right.
But again, hire that individual on day one, and then say, as long as I'm going to sign you to a year or 2 agreement that says you're going to work for me since I paid for your training for 2 years, and if you don't, I may decide that I'm going to come after you. Now, will you do that or not? I don't know. But what we really try to do is protect our quote students from making a dumb decision, and we think that employers should do that too. Don't have a bad day at work and say, well, I'm going to go work down at the street for $2 an hour more because my buddy works there, right? Grind it out and stick it through. Yeah.
That's interesting. So several years ago when I was in transportation, we had driver shortage, still an issue
Yeah.
to this day. We had to recruit and build our own CDL program. So we were recognized by the state, we were certified,
Yep.
we had instructors, and we did exactly what you're describing. We did a tuition reimbursement program where we put them on a 2-year agreement. We would fully fund, because it's about $6,000 to $8,000 to get your CDL, very similar to tech training, and they worked it off. So the way that we did our contract was it was the same kind of non-compete, and you worked it off time served, right? So every month that you worked for us, you eroded away at the debt that you owed us for the training. And when you made it to 2 years, you were debt free. If you left a little early, that we had an agreement that it would come out of your final check, or you would owe us money. And to your point, we didn't pursue all of them, but it got people sticky.
That is exactly right. And there are multiple ways to accomplish this. But we really believe that if a company really wants to solve their technician shortage, they have to get financially involved in the training of that technician, because it's just a reality. You can't, there's really no education system to dip into to hire grads. You just got to think about solving the problem differently. Yeah, totally agree.
Totally.
Yeah.
We've got more information on this on our website, fullbay.com. americandieseltraining.com/tech shortage. And then, of course, Tim, your website, americandieseltraining.com.
Correct.
americandieseltraining.com. So definitely recommend you guys go there. It seems like a great idea. Like to your point before we got on the air, it's one thing to have a great idea. It's another thing to be able to execute on it. And you guys appear to be executing. So great job.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, we're again, we just feel so passionate that there's really been about 3 generations of Americans have really been kind of left behind in the college for all mentality. We just feel very strongly that there are so many outstanding careers in this field, and we really feel like we love helping people and we love solving problems for businesses. So we kind of get to do everything, and that's really what we're real passionate about.
Yeah, love it. So real quick about Full Bay, for those of you who don't know. So, our aim with the technicians that you can find, we want to make you more efficient. The technicians that you do have, make them as efficient as possible, keep them turning wrenches and not doing other things. So if you guys are interested in seeing a demo of Full Bay, I'm just going to launch another poll. You can just respond to this and just indicate here that you do, and we'll reach out to you. But yeah, Tim, so the skills gap it's funny because 5 years ago, it's not funny, but 5 years ago, it was a big issue. You have, people like Mike Rowe out there with his stuff going on and so forth, talking about this, and it just seems to be getting worse.
I totally agree.
As a country, the more we bring jobs back to the country, are there people here willing to do the jobs or able to do the jobs, or maybe they're not even aware of it? So I guess you mentioned social media. You guys have outreach that way. How else you don't have to give away the secret sauce, because I know you're providing this as a service, but I guess there are people out there willing to do it. You just have to find them.
There are plenty of people. There are plenty of people out there willing to do this. And yeah, I mean, we were talking before this. I mean, we're very open in our belief that we are advocates for the industry.
Yeah.
We're advocates for people. And what we tell companies now is, if you want to work with us, that's great. But if you want to do this on your own, you can do this on your own. Now the programs sometimes are tough to execute.
You basically just gave it away.
Yeah, I just gave it away, right?
Yeah.
You were doing it on your own, right? In your shop,
We're trying
right?
to,
You're starting your own apprenticeship program. That's really the key. Is that. But yeah, so in terms of, outreach and social media, I mean, we use the usual suspects, right? So your Facebook.
But they're out there.
Oh, they're out there. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I can't remember who I was talking to. I was talking to a group, and I said to the HR, the VP of HR, I said, do you do any recruiting using Facebook? And she goes, I don't even use Facebook. I'm like, oh, okay. But non-traditional. Actually, they're not non-traditional. Non-traditional these days is a television commercial. Non-traditional these days is a radio ad.
Facebook is mainstream.
If you are not on the social media platforms where your potential either working technicians or potential technicians who would be perfect to be trained are, you are already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, anything else?
No, it's a great conversation. I think getting involved, I think that we're just hovering around this topic of getting involved. There's definitely ways to do that. There's some resources that we have available, and get creative and get involved. I think that it'll continue to be pervasive. We'll continue to grow as a country, and we got to invest in our people. And I agree with you. There's plenty of people. I did construction jobs. I was a framer. I did everything until I found my way. And it was people giving me the opportunity that really opened the door. I wasn't informed. There wasn't ways for me to find out, or I couldn't find out. So I think that the outreach and getting education out there for folks to consume is key.
I agree. And the one last thing that I'll say is that we believe that. I hear all the time, we need to get into the high schools and the middle schools to get people interested in this business. I think that's great. I don't think it's a reality. There are millions of people today. Our average age coming through our program is 26.7 years old. There are millions of 25-year-olds in this country today that would love to do this. Their resumes, if they've bothered to apply, are probably sitting in most HR trash bins, right?
Their brain is fully developed at 25. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're willing to work hard. Maybe they have a kid. Maybe some of the realities of life have set in.
Bingo.
They're like, you know, I got to find something to do. I'll sneak in real quick. One of the questions, do you have anybody in Oregon?
We're going to have someone real shortly. So we're opening a location. If they want to message me, you can get me, or they can just message me on the website. We're opening a facility in Tacoma, Washington in March, and this same partner is going to open one in Oregon shortly. I just don't know when. I mean, we're probably looking at a year, probably.
Cool.
Yeah.
You know, something too, just on this topic of the technicians, just training multiple shops across the years and talking to different technicians and hearing the vibe at the shop. There's you know, people talk about culture, but I think it's easier to find technicians sometimes when you've created a culture and environment where people want to come to work. And I think maybe reevaluate too, as you're looking at your shop today and you're thinking about the shortage. Is everything punitive? Because I know that it's easy for us to measure the last thing that what didn't go well. It's very easy to get that reaction from all of us. There's a lot of things that are going well for people, like showing up every day, just being appreciative that people come in on time or got a job done due to a deadline. That thankfulness, that gratefulness, and you know, bringing lunch in or having potlucks. Like, you create your own environment, but if it's always just us against them and punitive, and that's all techs here, it will be very hard to continue to recruit and keep your business staffed.
That's a great point. I mean, and if you look at studies, I mean, salary is typically 5th or 6th on the list. Number 1 is toxic. Bad boss is number 1 for why people leave. 2 is toxic work environment, right?
Yeah.
So and it's the little things. You're exactly right. Some silly little Super Bowl poll, or bringing in lunch or whatever, or bringing in an ice cream truck. I mean, it's amazing what motivates people, and money is typically not number 1. It's
Yeah,
not
the
number 3.
research shows money is a motivator up to the point that someone's needs are met, and
Yep.
beyond that, it ceases to be the number one
Exactly.
motivator.
Yep.
It's really easy for business leaders to forget that.
Yep.
Intrinsic motivation is higher on the list. Well, Tim Spurlock, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
AmericanDieselTraining.com. AmericanDieselTraining.com. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your insights, and for those of you who joined us, thank you, and have a great day. We'll see you guys later.